Hi everyone, today I'm going to tell you the one true story. Please support me by liking and subscribing. Thanks, are you ready? Here we go. Samantha's favorite thing in the world was her grandmother's library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves brimmed with dusty, leather-bound books. On stormy afternoons, when thunder shook the sky, she'd curl up in the oversized chair by the stained-glass window and lose herself in tales of far-off worlds. It was on one such afternoon that she found the veil between worlds. The book was unassuming. A plain, black cover with silver etching and no title on the spine. She hadn't noticed it before, though she knew the library by heart. Curious, she pulled it from the shelf and cracked it open. The first page greeted her with a cryptic sentence. Once the veil parts, the path is yours, but tread lightly, for it may never close again. Samantha felt a chill but laughed it off as thunder rolled overhead. She settled into the chair and began reading. The story was mesmerizing. A girl her age, exploring strange lands filled with impossible creatures and endless danger. The girl in the story was cunning, clever, and fearless. Samantha felt a kinship with her, and as the rain lashed against the window, she devoured the book. As she turned the page, she noticed something odd. The ink seemed to shimmer, the words shifting under her gaze. The room dimmed, the storm outside falling eerily silent. Samantha's head swam, her vision blurring as the words twisted into an illegible vortex. Then she was falling. Samantha awoke in a forest unlike any she had seen. Trees loomed overhead, their bark black as coal and leaves glowing faintly blue. The air was thick and heavy, carrying the scent of earth and something metallic. A shiver ran down her spine as she stood, clutching the book, now impossibly light in her hands. "Hello?" she called, her voice swallowed by the dense fog. There was no answer, only the distant sound of something skittering. Her pulse quickened as she remembered the stories. This was exactly how they started. A strange world, a lone traveler. But there was always a way out. There had to be. Samantha set off, weaving through the haunting forest. The skittering grew louder, closer, until a shadow darted between the trees. She froze, clutching the book tighter. "Who's there?" Silence. Then a low growl. She ran. Hours, or perhaps days, passed in a blur. The forest was unending, and the sky never changed, remaining a perpetual twilight. Samantha's cunning kept her alive. She avoided the clawed creatures that hunted her, fashioned a makeshift torch from a fallen branch, and scavenged bitter fruits from twisted vines. The book became her guide. The pages now showed her things not written before. Maps of the forest, glimpses of the creatures, cryptic messages warning of dangers ahead. Yet, the more she relied on it, the heavier it seemed, as though it was feeding on her desperation. Her mind began to fray. She spoke aloud to herself, to the book, to the shadows that lurked just beyond her vision. She wasn't sure if she was awake or dreaming anymore. Time had no meaning. Then she found the first of the doors. It stood in the middle of a clearing, a massive, ancient door of stone, carved with intricate patterns. Words etched into its surface read, "To step forward is to leave one prison for another." Samantha hesitated, but the growls in the distance urged her on. She pushed it open and stepped through. She emerged into a sprawling desert under a blazing, alien sun. The sand burned her feet, and the wind carried whispers. The creatures here were worse, towering beasts with too many eyes and teeth. But there was always another door. Each one led to a new, more harrowing place. A labyrinth of thorny vines, a city of abandoned buildings where ghostly figures lingered, a cavern of glowing fungi that screamed when touched. With every step, she grew weaker, her mind unraveling. She began to question whether she was still herself. The book, now unbearably heavy, whispered to her in a language she didn't understand. It seemed alive, pulsing with a faint glow. Samantha stumbled into a cold, dark expanse. The air was sharp and metallic, and the ground beneath her feet was slick with something wet. In the distance, a faint light glimmered. She staggered toward it, clutching the book, her only companion in this endless nightmare. The light was another door. Smaller this time, wooden and familiar. Hope surged in her chest as she recognized it. It was the door to her grandmother's library. Tears streamed down her face as she reached for the handle. But the book resisted. It burned in her hands, its pages flaring open to reveal one final message. The veil parts only once. To cross is to lose yourself. Samantha screamed, throwing the book to the ground. It erupted into flames, the fire spreading unnaturally fast, devouring the darkness around her. The door glowed brighter, and she flung it open, desperate to escape. She tumbled into the library, gasping for air. The storm still raged outside, the familiar scent of old books and rain filling her lungs. But something was wrong. The air felt too thin, the colors too vibrant. She stumbled to the mirror above the fireplace and froze. The reflection wasn't hers. It looked like her, but the eyes were wrong. Too wide, too bright, filled with a flickering, otherworldly light. She touched her face, and the reflection didn't follow. Behind her, the book lay on the floor, untouched by flames. Its cover gleamed, and new words appeared. Welcome home, traveler. The veil never truly closes. Samantha turned, and the library dissolved into shadows. The world beyond the veil had claimed her. The sensation of dissolving was unlike anything Samantha could describe. Her body felt stretched thin, her thoughts unraveling into fragments. She couldn't tell if she was falling, floating, or trapped in stillness. Time ceased to exist, and yet she remained aware of something watching her. Then she awoke. Samantha found herself back in the forest where her journey had begun. The black trees and glowing leaves seemed duller now, as if drained of their once ominous vitality. The air hung heavy, oppressive, and the book lay open at her feet. Its pages had changed again, filled with sketches of creatures she recognized and phrases she could barely comprehend. The path loops. Escape is an illusion. Despair clawed at her chest, but a flicker of defiance surged within her. She refused to be a prisoner. There had to be a way out. She just hadn't found it yet. Gathering her resolve, she picked up the book. It was lighter now, almost weightless. That felt like a trick, but she didn't care. If it held answers, she needed them. As she flipped through the pages, a pattern emerged. The cryptic symbols and strange illustrations hinted at something she had overlooked. The veil wasn't just a boundary. It was alive. It responded to fear, to hope, to desperation. Samantha realized it had been toying with her, reshaping itself with every step she took. Her mind raced. If the veil was alive, it could be manipulated. She needed to outthink it. Samantha began experimenting, testing the boundaries of the world. She retraced her steps to the stone door in the forest. It no longer read the same message. Instead, it taunted her. Why do you return? Is the hunt not enough? Ignoring the chill running down her spine, she refused to step through. Instead, she studied it, running her hands over the carvings. The patterns were intricate, endless loops that seemed to twist into themselves. She closed her eyes and focused on her breathing, willing the door to open without touching it. Nothing happened. She tried again, this time imagining herself already on the other side. A flicker of light appeared at the edges of her vision. Encouraged, she concentrated harder, envisioning her grandmother's library in every detail. The smell of old books, the warmth of the fireplace, the distant rumble of the storm. The door dissolved into mist. Samantha's heart raced as she stepped through. For a fleeting moment, she felt the familiar warmth of the library, heard the crackle of the fire. But as she reached out to touch the bookshelf, it shattered like glass, and she was back in the desert. The cycles continued, each one more brutal than the last. Samantha's cleverness kept her alive, but her grip on reality weakened with each failure. She stopped speaking, stopped counting the days. The veil was unrelenting, reshaping her surroundings into grotesque parodies of places she had once loved. Her childhood home, her school, her grandmother's kitchen. Each time, they disintegrated before her eyes, leaving her in ever more hostile landscapes. The creatures grew bolder, their forms twisting into versions of people she had known, her best friend, her mother, even her own reflection. She learned to outwit them using traps and misdirection, but the cost was steep. Every victory felt hollow, every defeat chipped away at her sanity. The book remained her only constant. It no longer spoke in cryptic phrases. Instead, it began to show her her own thoughts, her fears, her memories. She saw herself as a child, clutching her grandmother's hand as they explored the library for the first time. She saw herself older, alone, lost in the pages of another story, desperate to escape her own life. "You have always sought other worlds," the book whispered. "This one has merely found you." One day, Samantha reached a place that felt different. The air was still, the ground smooth and reflective like black glass. At the center of this void stood a figure cloaked in shadow, holding a book identical to hers. "Who are you?" Samantha demanded, her voice hoarse from disuse. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it opened its book, and Samantha's voice echoed from its pages. "I am you." The realization hit her like a blow. This wasn't a world she had stumbled into by accident. It was her creation, born from every story she had ever read, every desire to escape, every fear of being trapped. The veil was her reflection, and the figure was its keeper. "Let me out," she whispered. The figure tilted its head. "You've always had the key." Samantha looked down at her book. The pages had gone blank, the cover cold and lifeless. She realized then that the book wasn't a guide. It was a tether, anchoring her to the veil. If she destroyed it, would she finally be free? Her hands trembled as she tore at the pages. They disintegrated into ash, the book growing hotter and heavier until she dropped it. The figure began to fade, the world collapsing around her. She screamed as the void swallowed her. Samantha opened her eyes to the library, the storm still raging outside. For a long moment, she sat frozen, the book nowhere to be seen. Had it worked? Was she truly home? She stood on shaky legs and walked to the window. The world outside looked normal, familiar. But when she turned back to the mirror above the fireplace, her reflection was gone. The veil had let her go, but it had taken something with it. And in the library, a new book appeared on the shelf. The Traveler's Tale. The silver letters shimmered, waiting for the next reader. A living doll, cursed to watch the world unravel, forever trapped in the grip of the one who had given him everything, and taken everything in return. Thank you for watching. Please support me and meet me in another video.